also the Enterprise Center. That delay and you get like 6 more people. All right, am I? Yes, no, yes, no. Test. There's plenty of room over here, okay? Like there's tons of room. There are not a lot of people here today. Please move towards the center where you can really see Derik and the screen. You'll have a much better experience. And there's like a whole wing of this just completely open. All right, thanks for coming out to Cha Devs, or Dev Lunch. As usual, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Lamppost Group, Carbon 5, EPB, Colab, Society of Work, UT Chattanooga, the Enterprise Center, which actually runs the 5th floor space here and allows us to use this great AV resources and live streaming equipment, etc. Today, we're hearing from Derik Pell, who is an engineer at Emma. Emma, he can tell you more about that, but it's a email
marketing.
It is marketing. I was going to say that, but I didn't want to say that. I wasn't sure how much like marketing was part of it. Anyway, who works remotely here in Chattanooga, actually here in this building, which we're really happy to have him here. And so give a hand up for Derik.
Thanks. How do I get my presentation on the screen? Okay, then. Excellent. But, second, because I can't see my notes, so give me a second here, sorry. Well, now you can see my notes. Congratulations. Sorry? I turned mirroring off. Sorry. There we go. I am technologically backward today, apparently. Command which? That is not it. You know what? Let's just kind of wing it. So I am Derik Pell. I am an engineer at Emma Email Marketing. We are based out of Nashville. We have a few people working here in Chattanooga that work remotely. We're actually hiring, so for a couple of different developer positions, if you're interested, I can talk to you about that afterwards. So this is me all around. This is sort of a soft talk. This isn't really a technical talk. I gave this at Pi Tennessee a couple of months ago. This is really about helping to overcome what they're calling imposter syndrome or something along those lines, just that sort of feeling that maybe I'm not in the right space. The reason I wanted to have this conversation is as our industry grows, this is going to become more and more relevant to more and more new people coming in, and it's not something that really gets handled kind of anywhere. There's no onboarding process to really explain this to you, like why you might be feeling like you're a fish out of water or anything like that. No matter what kind of background you came from, everything is very different when you start to actually work in the industry. And I think it's really important to start telling each other these stories and start like bringing this up so that we can kind of help each other out, because there are a lot of real pain points in this industry, and we want to help. I think we need to help smooth that over for each other. So hopefully this is not just for new people, but for more experienced programmers who can to kind of get everyone thinking, oh yeah, I remember when that was happening to me. So anyway, maybe I shouldn't be a programmer. TLDR is, no, you should be. It's a really great industry. It's a lot of fun. I love my job, despite all the pain points that happened. So there are a couple of places where those pain points kind of pop up. So let's kind of go through some of the places where I saw them happening to myself First off, I never learned this in school. Well, yeah. A lot of what happens is your work environment is so much more complex than your learning environment, no matter what learning environment you came from. I came into the industry working. I got a master's in computer science, and as soon as I got in, I was like, wow, I didn't encounter a ton of this stuff. Like on a daily basis, if I had to reboot my computer to get everything running again, to get my development environment back up again, I had to start up 3 Python processes, a Vagrant box. I had to start up at least 1, probably 2 node processes. I had to get Elasticsearch going, Cassandra going. I had to sometimes get an SQL database going. This is all just to like get me back to a place where I could even develop, start working again. It's a really complex system, and these are things that you don't necessarily have to get all running at the same time when you're learning. Things like how to SSH into a remote box. That's not something I learned. I did learn that in school, but I also kind of knew that a little beforehand. But there's a ton, it's really possible you might not learn some of the simple stuff. Git. I actually just recently worked with a coworker who had come over to Emma doing, we do mostly Python and Node. He had done 15 years of .NET work. He had no experience using Git. He had no experience using Vim. He had no experience using any of the Linux tool sets that we use on a day-to-day basis. This was all completely foreign to him after 15 years of experience. And that was a pain point for him. That was something that was really, he was able to get over it, of course, but it was still something that was really a big frustration for him. So just kind of remember, as you're coming in, if you're coming in new, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to get thrown at you that you never even had to think about, or at least it's going to be configured in a way that you probably never had to think about in your learning. And if you're more experienced, as you see new developers come in, kind of remember, it's not just, you can't just say, oh yeah, push this up to GitHub. You can do a local rebase, but then when you want to push your branch up after you get feedback, you don't want to rebase. You want to just leave the history as it is, and don't ever force push into master. But, if you've never used GitHub, you have no idea what any of that means, right? So just kind of keep in mind that what you're telling someone in 3 months is going to be completely obvious. 3 days into the job, not so much. Theory does not always equal application. How many times in your real work environment have you had to calculate the big O notation for an algorithm? If you do really algorithm intensive work, perhaps so, but if you're on your day-to-day work, probably not. Like, I've never done it in the 4 years I've been developing professionally. It's something that's good to know. It's not something that I use in my day-to-day job. Along the same lines, you can solve this problem using recursion. That's great. It looks really cool. Awesome. But what are the costs that you incur by using recursion? So there's all this stuff that you learn that's really interesting and really exciting, but we're on a day-to-day basis, we're fairly far removed from that. So you have to figure out which skills actually apply, and don't try to apply everything. You don't need to re-implement a linked list in probably any language, because it's already there. You know how to do it, or at least you understand the basics, but it's not something that's really feet on the ground, day-to-day kind of work. And so that can kind of throw people, like when you first come in, you're like, I can implement a linked list. Where do I do that? You don't. You use the built-in list and you solve the next problem in line. So just kind of remember, not everything you learned in school is really going to be applicable in your job. You may have a different workflow when you're working on a school project, or even when you're working in one team. Your workflow may change from team to team. So you may come in and realize and have a workflow that says, okay, you have your particular branch for the bug you're working on, plus we have a development branch, and then we have a testing branch, and then all of that runs up into the master branch. Or when you're working by yourself, you may not have to have that entire kind of workflow. You may have to just write the code and push it, and there it is. But when you're working on a team, it may be one particular workflow. And if your teams are self-organizing, a lot of times we tend to do that at Emma. We let our teams decide what workflow works best for us. Then we may not have all those branches in the middle. So you may actually have to kind of jump workflows from one team to the other as you move around and learn different things. So I think that's about flexibility. You really need to understand, like kind of how to just come in and ask those questions, like what is our our workflow for this particular team, and how does figure out how that thing kind of differs as you work with people. Ask those questions. That's a big part of what's happening, is we need to be able to ask the questions where we don't instinctively know things. It's okay to ask. Not everybody knows when they're coming in. And always remember that with new challenges comes new opportunities to fail. But those are also opportunities to learn. I learn really well when I fail, which is great because I fail quite a bit. And I imagine most of us do, but as you get better at this job, you start to fail less and less, and you bring in all the experience that you have. But those failures are places where you can learn new things, not just how to implement a new algorithm, but ways to just do your job better across the board. There are 20% of my job is, at least 20% of my job is not actively writing code. So anytime I fail and do something wrong, even in or outside of a code base, that teaches me a new way to do something going along, and that's great stuff to pick up. But it's also really great for the more experienced programmers, again, to remind junior programmers or new people to your team or new people to your company, it's all right, that's just a bump in the road, everything's going to be okay. You can just learn from it and move on. There's also, why is everybody always picking on me? So a little background on this. This original talk came out of an incident I had sometime last year. And it was, I'd been developing for a while. I was on my stride. I felt pretty good about things. I was picking up Python. Everything was really great. And then we started writing in Node. Now, Node hit me really hard because we were using promises and asynchronous programming, and it was something I had never had to do before. And I was able to get the code to work, but then I took a sprint to have to go back through and backfill a lot of tests that weren't originally there. And testing promises, it's still a lot. It is largely just like, I hope this works, and just poke at it until it does. In any case, there was a time there when I was trying to learn Node, trying to hit goals in my sprint. It was all kind of crashing down on me, and I did not ask the questions. I did not go to other people and ask for advice. I really felt like, oh, I should be able to do this. It was a team of basically 3 developers. None of us had much, if any, Node experience at all. I felt like we were probably all in the same boat. The other developers had more development experience than I did, but again, none of us really had that much Node experience. And so I felt like I need to be able to pick this up. They're picking it up. I need to be able to pick it up. And eventually I did, but there was a time there where almost every day I asked the question, should I be doing this? For an entire sprint I almost every day decided today's the day I'm just going to go in and put in my resignation because I should not be doing this. I can't pick this up. Something's not clicking. Luckily enough, I had my other coworkers sort of recognize I was going through something. They, in their own way, kind of each worked with me individually and helped me get over that hump. And once I got over that hump, Node is still, my Achilles heel, but I can face all of that much better now. I still get the frustration. I just don't get the sense of I shouldn't be doing this because I'm frustrated. The frustration just means, it's just part of the job from time to time. And again, if you see someone that looks like they might be going through that, just talk to them. Just even a simple, hey, you're doing all right. Everything's going to be okay. Even if you can't answer their question, just kind of recognize you probably went through this same type of thing at some point or another. So it's about helping each other out. And specifically, a couple of points along there, you need to learn how to accept feedback. As someone who, this specifically was about pushing up commits and asking for reviews, on pull requests, and not really being in a great place to accept the feedback that was coming. All the feedback was great. It was a little frustrating the way it came. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But first off, you just really need to learn how to accept feedback. And probably the other side of this coin is you need to learn how to give feedback. You know, I think a lot of people, we really try to give very positive feedback, and that's really great. But, you know, again, keep in mind, the feedback that you're giving, who are you giving it to? Are you giving it to someone who has had several years of experience and can really understand what you're saying, or do you need to maybe break it down into you know, smaller sentences, smaller words, whatever, however you need to do it to get someone who's newer to understand exactly what you're getting at. Code reviews are discussions. This probably was the biggest factor in me finally realizing I can get through this, like how to get through this. A coworker told me, like, explain this to me. This is when I was having a real problem with the code review process. I would push up, get some feedback, make the changes, push up, get more feedback on the exact same code, make more changes. And I went through this cycle 3 or 4 times, and I was ready to pull my hair out. I was like, why are we not just handling this at one time? And my coworker pointed it out to me. It's like, code reviews are discussions. You have this sort of back and forth with someone, right? Like you point out some things and you discuss what's happening in your code and why they think it needs to be changed. And then you go on to the next part of that code. And so that discussion is sort of ongoing. It's not always, it doesn't always happen like all at one time. It even says, you know, on GitHub, if you do a pull request, you know, you have tabs for the files and that you've pushed. You have tabs for the commits that you've made, and you have a tab that I don't think it says discussions, but it says conversation or whatever it says. No, but GitHub is even trying to point it out to you. Hey, you know, there's some give and take feedback loop here. So, you know, if you're feeling like you're being picked on, just sort of remember that that's probably not what's going on. Hopefully that's not really what's going on. Hopefully your coworkers are, you know, good enough people that they're not picking on you, that you just have to remember this is an ongoing discussion until everything gets worked out, because everybody's trying to get the best product possible out there. Don't get emotionally attached to your code. This was sort of it can be a big problem, I think, especially as you write code that's really interesting, you really like it, like it's you know, maybe you spend a while figuring out like just exactly the right algorithm to get everything working, and everything looks really good, and you have everything really formatted nice, and you're really proud of it, and you push it up, and someone comes back and says, oh yeah, you can take these 10 lines, and you can do those with a list comprehension in Python. You can break it down to 1 line. You're like, I spent 2 hours getting this all together. Yeah, that's true. You did, and it's good code for what it is. But in Python, it could be better with a list comprehension or whatever. You need to be pushing code that you're proud of, but you don't need to be so emotionally attached to it that you can't listen to the feedback and just go, yeah, all right, that's 2 hours gone. But yeah, you're right. Now I've learned about list comprehensions, and that's exactly how I learned about list comprehensions. And if you've never used them in Python, they're a really great tool that you see all over Python code. But to really understand them, it took me getting that pushback from somebody and saying, oh yeah, you could totally take this all and make it into a list comprehension. I'm like, okay, now list comprehensions make more sense on a day-to-day basis for me. So it's that kind of thing where you try not to get so like attached to your code that you don't listen to the feedback that someone gives you. So those are some of the places where you can maybe feel picked on. One of the things that I didn't do that I really should have done is try to figure out how to cope with this outside of myself, because there's so much going on around you that you can't necessarily do everything on your own in a timely manner. Eventually, I'm sure you can get there, but it's so much easier if you just tell somebody, hey, you know, I'm having a little trouble here. So where can you get that sort of feedback from people? The first place is work. Right? We all work somewhere, and unless you're working for yourself, in which case, we'll get to that in a minute. At work, try to find a mentor. You may not have a formal mentoring process at work. If you don't, see if you can start one. Talk to your management, see if you can get something going. If you can't get something formal, just talk to somebody. It doesn't even have to be in your job necessarily, but just talk to somebody and try and find someone who has more experience either in the tool set that you're using, at the job that you're at, wherever, just someone that you can bounce ideas off of and get some sort of feedback. Part of that is you can try to work with senior developers, talk to people who have been around for a while, and like your mentor doesn't necessarily even have to be a developer. It's just someone that can help guide you through the process of being new to the job. Senior developers can help guide you through the code base. They can help guide you through the tool set, the language, whatever you may be having problems with. And both of these can kind of give you that feedback that says, you're doing all right, everything's okay, you don't need to worry about it, or guide you in like, okay, you need to really beef up this, like you need to make sure you understand this part of the language or this part of the code base. Have regular feedback meetings. This is something we've really started doing a little more at Emma, and not necessarily on a technical level, but just for us on like our career level. But if you're feeling like you need this on the technical level, try to get someone to have those kind of meetings with you, like every sprint, if you're working in sprints. If you push code and everything, sometime at the end of whatever period, come back and ask a senior or someone to talk to you about what's happened. And so you can get that sort of like, okay, these are the things I saw happen, during this 2-week period with you. This compares to how it happened last 2 weeks, whatever. So you want to have regular feedbacks, but you also want to make sure that they're spaced out well enough that you can make significant changes along the way. If you are having these sort of feedback meetings every day or something, that's probably too much. You're probably not giving yourself enough time to really learn and take in new information. But if you do it on a 2-week basis, week, month, whatever works for you in your situation, just make sure you're having those so you can get that feedback. If you're not getting what you need at work, there are places inside the community. All of our communities, no matter what language you're in, no matter what technology stack you're working in, whether you're DevOps or security or whatever, there's a community out there. Everybody does something to talk about the problems that they're having, and there are all sorts of places where you can go and find information. Meetups like this. This is a great place. I loved going to meetups. I tried to be active up in Nashville. I loved coming down to Chattanooga and realizing exactly how many meetups there were. Before I moved back here, I didn't realize how big the technology community was in Chattanooga, and I was really excited to learn about this meetup in particular. So anytime you can get together and have people giving you information, if it's something, you can talk through, you can always find somebody to talk through something with. Conferences. Originally I gave this at Pie, Tennessee. I love talking at conferences. Conferences are great just in general. I love going to them. It's a great way to learn things, to meet people, to network and just make connections. And but one of the things that I found to really learn about something was anytime I find a conference that I want to go to, I try to submit a paper. Because it really gives you it gives me anyway, that push to figure out a topic that I want to learn more about and really commit to learning about it. Because if I'm going to commit to giving a paper on it, I want to have like a really good understanding of it. And having that good understanding is sort of cyclical. Like you start to learn more about something and you start to feel more confident in everything and it just sort of builds. And that's a really good way for me anyway to start building a bit more confidence. Slack, IRC, things along those lines. I know Chattanooga Development has a Slack channel that seems really active. Nashville had a really good one that was really active. And it's great to be able to just drop in and either have like a specific question about a language or about a problem that you're having, or just go into the general and like just relax and talk to people and make connections and find other people and ask very general questions. I've been maybe very lucky. I've never had anything happen in Slack or IRC that was like trolling or anyone really ugly. You ask questions and you get answers. Typically, that's what happens. That's not always what happens on the internet. So if you start getting really ugly responses, I just kind of tend to back out. I figure if I'm not getting, like positive responses, I'm probably in the wrong place. And that's not my community. I need to go to a better community where people are being a little more positive. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. Write a blog, which, like conferences for me, is a really good way to learn something. I'm really behind on my blog. I think the last one I wrote was actually a follow-up to this talk from a couple of months ago. But if I'm going to write a blog, I want to have that information and put it out there in a way that helps people. And getting that information together so that I'm helping people helps me understand it better. And again, that builds confidence, that follows through into everything. So I think this is a really good way to keep up with what's going on, because you don't want to write a blog about something someone's written 300 times before. You want to find something that people maybe aren't really that used to, or you find one where something's described but it didn't really make sense to you, so you rewrite it in a way that makes sense to you, and maybe that makes sense to someone else down the line. And then finally, contribute to open source software. That can be, from what I understand, that can be a real scary place. If you contribute, there can be a lot of people that can give you very negative feedback, and it can get kind of ugly. But I think that's being brought to light more, and that's really hopefully going away. But in any case, that gives you a really good chance to jump into a code base on a library that you use at work that maybe you don't completely understand. You can go in, even if you don't contribute anything other than documentation. That's a great way to start. That's how you learn the library itself. If you can document it, you have a better understanding of it altogether. If you can contribute code to it, then that's also great too. But at any level, contributing is going to help you out, and it's going to help the community out. And ultimately, that's what this is all about, is helping make our community stronger, because most of us probably want to do this for our careers, and this is where we want to be for a very long time. And if we're not in a good community, and if we're not helping each other, if we're not talking about these types of issues, then that's just going to make everything much more difficult for everyone. So anyway, that's what I have. Hope everybody can learn something from this and think about helping out each other. Thanks. Any questions as Andrew rushes up here? Yeah.
For our live stream audience.
This is kind of weird. What's the worst advice you've heard someone else give a beginner who is going through like imposter syndrome or something like that?
I don't know that I've heard a worst. I think probably it's not about the advice so much as just sort of blowing them off. So it wasn't that what they said was wrong necessarily. It's what they said was, you'll work it out, you'll figure it out, and then walk away. If someone's coming to you for help, they're in need of help. Like that's not something you really should just, if you can't help them right then then follow through with, okay, I got to finish this up, we'll whatever. But I think probably the worst thing was, I'm sure you'll figure it out. Like that's pretty demoralizing, I think. Sorry? Yeah, being dismissive, exactly, right. Because, yeah, I'm coming to you because I can't work it out, or at least in that moment it feels like I can't work it out. So, yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Not really a question, but could you just talk a little bit more about what you do at Emma and what they do?
Yeah,
Like
sure. So we do email marketing sort of along the lines of like MailChimp or Constant Contact, companies like that. So we help people organize lists for sending out email. So if if your company wants to gather information on like people who have purchased from you lately, whatever, and you want to organize emails. If you want to send a simple thank you email, we can help you send an email. We can set it up so that you can send an email to like a person as soon as they buy stuff. But if you want to send out coupons on somebody's birthday, then we can help you organize, your whole mailing list. If you are gathering everyone's birth dates, then we can help you organize and segment and send out emails based on someone's birth date, or if you want to send them a coupon because they haven't purchased in a year, or various things like that. We also help you design the email. So if you want to get some professional marketing help, like you want it to be more than just like happy birthday, you want to like put together a really good professional looking email. We have a lot of templates that can help you with that. We also have designers that can help craft your email and give you a very professional look from the email marketing side. And then also help you make sure that you're not spamming people. We help filter for all of that. We want to help keep everybody like on the up and up and make sure that you're marketing to people who really want to be marketed to. That kind of thing.
Thanks for your talk. At least for me, and I know some other developers, we end up sort of switching languages, it seems like almost yearly. Mm-hmm. How do you reconcile being an expert without ever being able to really expertly know a language?
If I ever get to the expert level, maybe I can answer that question a little more easily. So like that's how I got into this. And so like that was this whole thing, was making that move from Python, which I felt fairly comfortable in, to Node, which just hit me like a ton of bricks. I think you just have to kind of keep in mind, the types of things that do translate. Like there's all this stuff that'll come over with you, like how to build, how to use conditionals and really good best practices that are language agnostic. But I think really just sort of keeping in mind that as you come into something new, it's new. Like it's something you've never hit before, so you can't really like berate yourself for not knowing list comprehensions if you've never worked in a language that has them, right? Like I came into Python from Java, and Java has nothing like that, right? So coming into Python, not knowing about them, read about them, like, yeah, that sounds great. Don't really know where to use them until someone pointed out, you can take these 10 lines and replace them with one list comprehension. So I think it's really just sort of keeping in mind and sort of reminding yourself, like, this is all brand new. Like, I have all this experience, but I've never used Git before. So, like, it's frustrating, but you can't let that, like, really sort of inundate you and think, like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. That's one part of the entire scope of things. Like, you've got to remember to keep everything sort of in its proper place. Nope. Anything else? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Derik. So real quick while I have everybody here, I should probably have checked these dates. I think of the week after next, which would be the 26th of May, we do not have a speaker. So if someone feels inspired by, Derik's encouragement about being, a good newbie here, we would love to have you talk about whatever topic you're comfortable talking about. So anyway, see me, send us an email and meet up, or talk to Brett, hit us up on Slack. There's like a million ways to get in contact. But anyway, we'd love to have somebody else from our community present a week from next Thursday. So, and there are people in our community who present a lot and are really willing to sit down and help you. If you have something you're like, man, I really want to talk about this, never done a presentation before, we'll hook you up with somebody that'll help you like figure out that part. And hopefully not say discouraging things. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody, and see you next week.